That's crazy. You're crazy.
It's a long... How long is this movie again?
Hour 50, something like that.
2:27.
Oh, damn. Goes faster. Feels faster than that.
I have to disagree with you there.
Second time around, it felt faster.
I believe that. Yeah, I believe that. I mean, I ended up breaking it up. I had dinner in the middle, but it felt like I'd watched the full movie, and then there was a whole other hour to watch after that.
Yeah, you had dinner while they had dinner.
Yeah, basically.
Is there a moment in the film where it's like a title?
You mean the opening credits?
No, I mean somewhere in the middle. I'm getting
There
confused.
is. It surprised me. There is a 6 months later.
Oh yeah,
title card.
That's right.
Yeah, that actually surprised me. But gosh, we're talking about John Cassavetes, Gena Rowlands, and A Woman Under the Influence.
I thought you had more. I thought you had more to say.
I wanted to sit in the silence there for a second. This is a movie about not adhering to traditional narrative structures in movies. So maybe we'll refuse to adhere to traditional podcasting and just leave some silences in for this one. Because look, you might want to go to the film experts for your opinions on Cassavetes films, but some like it unauthorized. And I'm Jay Brooks Young.
And I'm Zach Jones. And this was your first time watching A Woman Under the Influence. You've seen some other Cassavetes films. We saw Husbands. We've seen Opening Night. And starting off with Faces. We both watched Faces.
Shadows, rather. Shadows
even.
The first one from 59. No. Yeah. I forget what the sequence was, but I mean, when you start getting interested in film that's older than, 30 years or something, you very quickly hear his name. And so you seek those out. And either I got to see a screening of Opening Night, or I just decided independently that, if he's a big deal, I want to see, the first movie. I want to throw these on the chronological list that we work through, and I want to see Shadows and 59 and work my way through. But either way, yeah, it's a very interesting career arc that we've been filling out. Again, these are just, I think I saw Opening Night like 2 or 3 years ago, but that was my first one, and it was a real eye-opener, for sure. But when did you first see one of his films, Zach?
I think it was A Woman Under the Influence. And I think it was like a few years ago now. My wife and I watched it. And it blew us away with the camera, handheld, the frenetic kind of quality to it, the constant focus shifting and all that, which we'll get into more. But yeah, just the style of it, the anxiety of it all felt fresh, felt modern, and it somehow he pulls off something which I feel like has been replicated to some degree now. I'm thinking of Frownland and those types of films, but he somehow pulled off like this very frenetic, anxiety-inducing film while also being like very real and very like hard to walk away from. Like you would think, I bet there were people. I bet there were people who did leave the theater, but overall, people were like glued to the screen and probably felt like they were watching a documentary, because that is how it sort of feels.
Yeah, there are certainly the detractors. Pauline Kael is a famous one, and we can talk about her review, her take on the Cassavetes style. But no, I mean, he was doing something very, very unique at this time. And it still hits you today because it's very hard to replicate. Even the Safdie films. I haven't seen Frownland, but their later ones, they feel a little more constructed. They're laid out in a kind of tidy fashion.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite letterboxed users, Milo, put it very well in his review of A Woman Under the Influence. But those films end up feeling measured in comparison to a film like A Woman Under the Influence, because this film, just the scenes themselves spool out in such an uncinematic way. Like there's these circular conversations and inane dialogue that repeats itself, and action that kind of rises and falls and then kind of rises again, sort of without like a rhythm to it, in a way that mimics real life. I think there aren't a lot of filmmakers that go to that length to do something similar, as much as they might borrow on the acting styles and the frenetic visual style of this film. Like the way that it's edited, the way the scenes play out is so unique, and the part that I think gets missed when some of those later directors look at these films and are inspired to make something like them.
Mm-hmm. Going off of that, what was your general feeling watching this, now that you have seen some other Cassavetes and they all have the same style in that way? What was your feeling about this one?
Oh, it's absolutely fantastic. I mean, I understand why it's placed at the top of his filmography, and it's because of like Gena Rowlands. It's because of how unique of a character she plays, she creates, and just like seeing that arc and kind of being in it with her is really incredible. I think the last one I watched of Cassavetes was Husbands, which I think is terrific, but you're locked in with three just like irredeemable men through that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And there's kind of more of a punishing nature to that than you have in this film, in the same way, because I think you come to be endeared to Mabel so much through this film, and there's some wonderful moments where that really, for me, like crested, and I was like, geez, she's in a horrible situation in her life.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like exploitative to me or anything. Like I so appreciate the way that they put this story together and, highlight a character like this, because she's not that outlandish, and
mm-hmm.
her husband is not that outlandish either. They're unstable. They've kind of fallen down this sort of spiral of this life that just, I don't know, they can't get a grasp on. But that doesn't feel unique, that doesn't feel like over the top. That feels like something you will encounter in your own life,
mm-hmm.
someone like that. And I think the treatment of the characters and what the story is about her just trying to claw back some like little bit of safety in this like hell that she has to stay trapped in. That's really compelling to watch. And I've loved pretty much everything I've seen from Cassavetes, but yeah, it's a damn masterpiece, man.
Yeah, it is. It's a masterpiece despite the fact that there's so many imperfections with it, and he's like Cassavetes somehow found a way to create a style in which he could get away with imperfections, because the imperfections are an addition to the total sum of the movie. Like if you were watching like a Spielberg or some other movie and it became as imperfect as this is, you would think to yourself, what's going on here? With this scene, the cameraman must have been totally off that day, and they weren't they weren't doing their job. With this, the way Cassavetes directed was he worked with people who were a little less experienced with this movie. He was working with a new cameraman, and they just didn't fully know what they were doing. But Cassavetes didn't care. He to him, it was more about whether or not the emotion was being captured enough that you knew what was going on, but didn't have to like see it perfectly. And I think that style, again, it feels like you're really there with the person versus like it feeling at all like it was staged. I mean, this is the opposite in some sense because the camera is messing up. It's because of the imperfections that you're like, this is real. This is totally real.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, if you start to unpack why he would like live with those imperfections or why he would gravitate towards this kind of, sloppy style, I think it comes down to the acting style, like first and foremost. And I didn't get a chance to look up again some of the background, like when he started getting into this kind of like improvisational style. I know it was like early in his career, like in the 50s or something. And I would think of like his sort of class of acting to be something of an offshoot of like The Method, that kind of stuff that was happening in New York. If you think about Marlon Brando or James Dean or some of these famous actors who kind of were ultra real, like they didn't perform for the audience. They just tried to embody the emotion and live it out. I don't know how to put that, but like somehow they, you leaned in to watch them because it felt more real. It didn't feel like you were watching a performance. And like that seemed to be the aim of this type of acting that Cassavetes and Rowlands and his friends were into, was like, we'll improv and we'll try to live in the scene very actively and just see what comes out of that. And yeah, I mean, that was not a ethos for making films, A film has a script, and a film is composed of scenes where you guys say your lines and you find your little spots to, perform in between that, and let your character come out. But this was filmmaking really driven by character, it feels like. And he was on the forefront from making Shadows in '59 up to making this film. Like he was on the forefront of these sort of improvisational character first films. So he's, a groundbreaking director, because of that.
Yeah. And I don't know about his progression before this either, but too much. But I do know that I watched The Killers by Don Siegel from 1964, and I have seen Rosemary's Baby a couple times. And I know that even the difference between those two is wild. Like with The Killers, you can tell he's like, I don't know. I had the sense that he was performing in a role he didn't really want to be in to some degree, just because it did not have the same kind of freedom that Rosemary's Baby had. And even though he had a smaller role in Rosemary's Baby, it's very like, he seems like a real, like, normal person in that movie.
Yeah. So it would be interesting to watch the TV show he starred in, Johnny Staccato. I wonder if that feels more like a for-hire job, or if he kind of like felt like he had more license because it's just TV. Who cares? Like, I'll do what I want. I haven't seen any of that.
Yeah, it's interesting when an actor becomes a director. It's like, it's kind of a fascinating trajectory to break out into that role and to do it well. Sort of means that as an actor, you can imagine yourself as other people. Like a director is like, I don't know, in some sense a director is like every actor in a way, because they're trying to bring out they're trying to direct how that person should act to some degree. So they're imagining how those people should show up. So if you're an actor who desires that and then does that well, it means that you were like acting and having to act alongside people who you may have been like frustrated by. I'm sure that happens all the time.
Yeah, I remember hearing about how Ernst Lubitsch directs, and he like would dictate to the actors, you need to be exactly here. You need to say the line like this. And he would, you know, basically, say it for them. And he's one of those guys. I mean, a lot of the early directors were like actors, theater actors, before they got into movies. But yeah, Cassavetes feels very different, right? Because it feels like he's not telling them how to act. He is building this space for them to, be that author of their character.
Yeah, although there is a moment in Husbands when they're around a table and they're eating or drinking and stuff, and there's some woman that they all start like ganging up on, and they're like trying to get her to be more real. And I imagine that is some essence of Cassavetes, whether or not he was like that on set, of kind of like that's his goal, is to be like, actually stop thinking about acting and just be real. Apparently in Women Under the Influence, there was only one moment when Rowlands asks him, is towards the end. I think it was shot fairly chronologically. And so towards the end, she asks him, which they were married at the time. And she asks him, how should I show up here? Like, do I get to see the kids, or how should I be when I see the kids? And he basically says, like, I'm not telling you that. Like that. he kind of is like, I don't even know. That's you. You're the character. How would I know? And she's kind of like, no, I just need a little direction here. I just need to know what the idea is. And he apparently kind of like gets upset, like turns away and is like, I don't know. Figure it out. And it kind of creates a stern tension on set. But then that tension ultimately amounts to even potentially a better performance, because now that everything's tense, you're shooting this scene and everything's tense. It's like, that's the way it should be. So
yeah.
In some sense, like, because they're married, to have this like marital tension on set while shooting this film that's all about family tension kind of was like it would make sense. Like, it would make sense that you wouldn't have any tension between husband and wife, actor, director. Yeah.
Gosh, we listened to a little bit of that interview with William Friedkin on Mark Maron's podcast.
Yeah.
He tells these stories about the methods that he tried to use to get into the actors' heads and get them to perform a certain way, put them in a certain like psychological state, emotional state. They sound so unnecessary, like you're just being an asshole because you think that's the one way that you're supposed to direct. But and watching these films, I mean, with the emotion feeling so real and so raw. Yeah, when you like that scene you were talking about from Husbands, like you watch that and it makes you uncomfortable because now you're wondering, who's the character and who's the director, the person, and is are people, is this going to cross over a line into being abusive or traumatic or something? I mean, you run those risks, I think, when your work feels this kind of raw and close to the real life, close to reality, I guess. And I think that like these films definitely turn some people off because of that. They think that, it's exploitative for that reason, that you're just winding people up and getting a reaction out of them, prodding them for us all to watch.
Right.
And
yeah.
That's fine. Like I get that feeling, but like, I don't know. I still put value into this art, into the movies that come out of it. Like, I don't think that all art has to be at like 100% morally sound. I think you kind of lose something when you expect that of art. Like, that just closes off a lot of like human experience if an artist can't be a little like a little morally wrong in some way.
Yeah. Yeah, you could say films are affecting. Like there is a strange kind of argument that people will make that like this was like, is this just something to get your adrenaline going, or just to like, is it manipulative or things like that? I don't know. It's like this, but we put things on a screen, moving images on a screen, and then they make us feel stuff. And then if they don't, then you can be like, well, what's that about? You know, I feel like that argument is sort of a fairly flat argument. It's more interesting to get into like what is actually going on and what do the things actually mean, not so much if it's manipulative and it's how it affects you. It's going to affect you. You know what I mean? Like it's going to affect you, and the filmmakers are going to do whatever they want to do in order to get that. In order to do that, it's more interesting to talk about like what they were thinking and what they meant by what they were showing.
Mm-hmm.
And in that case, you have Gena Rowlands. Let's talk about Gena Rowlands. She's nominated for an Oscar this year, alongside
for this little independent film.
Yeah, for a film that took a couple of years to get finished because of never having like enough of a budget to really get these things done. So yeah, he and Cassavetes has a nomination for Best Director, I think.
Right. Yeah.
So 2 nominations. Gena Rowlands, one of them. I watched Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore.
Scorsese. I gotcha. Scorsese.
Yeah. Who stars Ellen Burstyn. I mean, I actually kind of found it pretty interesting that both the characters are like, you know, they're very different, but they all also are like somewhat living similar lives where they're like dealing with difficult men and they're like struggling to get by in different ways, but there's a similarity to some extent. But Burstyn's win to me felt like a safer choice. And I think in retrospect, I think most people do agree that Rowland's performance here is absolutely phenomenal, and probably would win today if there was like a similar vote.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if Pauline Kael played into that, to her losing that Oscar, because her big essay in the New Yorker on this film, if I remember right, she says something like Rowlands' performance is a dozen tour de forces. It's worthy of a whole line of Oscars. It's exhausting,
Yeah.
Basically saying like it's too much. We shouldn't be awarding this kind of like over the top type of performance. That it's a pretty famous review. It actually gets quoted in Charlie Kaufman's film, I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Jessie Buckley, who, funny enough, just won the Best Actress Oscar. Her character, quotes it, and she pantomimes the thumbs, dismissive thing that Mabel does all the time. Blowing the raspberry.
Yeah.
But it's like, this is one of those performances that I think was instantly iconic, because she goes further than people would.
Yeah.
Other actors would. Like, she's not afraid to kind of make this character look ridiculous, just have these crazy tics and stuff, but it all feels earned. It all feels real. And the reality of the film makes it totally understandable why she acts the way that she does,
Mm-hmm.
She's been living in a cage for years and years.
Yeah. Yeah, the psychiatrist that comes to visit and to administer her, is that what it's called?
Not institutionalized, but like
bring her in. He's gonna bring her in. He's an actor, apparently. He's like He's in other things. And he, during that scene where she, really starts to lose it, and it's kind of a longer scene, and then no one knows what to do, and they're all trying to get her to calm down. Towards the end of that scene, he apparently thought that she had actually lost it. And he had to take a breather after that scene was over. And I think he even started crying a bit. And some people were like, "Are you okay?" And he was like, I actually thought she was going to lose it for real. During the scene.
Life imitating art.
Yeah.
He starts to feel like he is the mental health professional, and he's like, "Oh gosh, this is actually happening."
Yeah. We went too far.
No, that's what it is. She is channeling 100% real emotions.
Yeah.
And I think because of how real it is, it's too uncomfortable for, someone like a Pauline Kael, and they reject it outright.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I don't know. That's it. I think you end up siding with safe movies or safe art, safe fiction if it's too much for you, if you think this is worth dismissing.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like the criticism towards it often feels like a preference of style. It doesn't feel like you're critiquing the film for what it is. You're critiquing the film against what you think it should be. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It's okay, there's, on the one hand, if you're a critic who prefers certain types of movies over others, then obviously your critique of the movies that you don't prefer are going to be biased, So how can you critique a movie that it isn't one that you prefer stylistically or otherwise as fair as you can? And if you can't do that, then don't critique, because you're just sharing your opinion. That's all you're doing. You're just telling the world, I prefer movies the other way. Cool. That's cool. That's great. But I don't know. I feel like the argument kind of, it doesn't.
I mean, I wouldn't say don't critique. It's hard to blame, someone like Kael.
Mm-hmm.
And not to make this whole episode about her, but
yeah,
I definitely appreciate her perspective, and that she did all this criticism, as much as I will often disagree with her. It's just it's an unfortunate thing where that stuff can kind of get into the hive mind a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And people can really adopt someone's opinion as a kind of fact just because of its prominence, where it is published or something, how many people see it. And I can understand why she had that preference and that feeling, because you have to, if you watch this film in 1974, you're a good number of years at this point into, this new Hollywood era post Hays Code being lifted. And it begins to feel like, each successive film is trying to ratchet up the anxiety and the horrifying things that you see on screen, now that those restrictions on what kind of content you can show are lifted. So I can imagine why you might watch this film and feel like it's a stunt to show, this harrowing stuff. We definitely, benefit from hindsight, knowing that there's really no one who can do it like Cassavetes did it. And that his oeuvre really stands the test of time. But, it just, in the moment, when you're seeing film after film that's full of violence and abuse of women and stuff like that, and you sit down to watch this, you're like, I'm fed up, It's too much at this point. It's numbing. It's not effective, and we don't live in that world. So, we get to watch this film, and it's unique among everything else that you can watch,
Yeah. Do you think there was anything about it? Pauline's critiques might be interesting, but not something that you would totally agree with. But were there some other problems with the film that you had at all? Anything that you felt like, any scenes or any particular thing that felt? Yeah.
Oh gosh, I not really. Not really. I mean, it did make me very uncomfortable to see these children in so many of these really upsetting scenes, right? It's hard to feel very good about child acting itself because we have so many examples where we know that is harmful to children and that they are often just, I mean, they're children. They can't really be, consenting people to working in an industry like this. So it's tough to watch, especially like some of the scenes towards the end. When there's literal violence and there's this fake blood and stuff, and these children are giving what feel like very real performances, and it's hard to feel like that's justifiable, I guess. But again, it's effective, and I think just as a piece, like it makes for a very good film.
Yeah. Apparently the kids were just like what they were. Like they hardly had to be directed at all. They just like showed up on set and they just did. Yeah, they did the roles. I mean, that's the thing about Cassavetes. He's setting it up so you don't have to do much to some degree. Cassavetes is working with a lot of his own family for this one. He has Gena Rowlands' mom in the movie be her actual mom. Did you know that?
That's what I thought, yeah. And I think both of their parents, Gena and Cassavetes, I think both of their parents are in Minnie and Moskowitz too. Which probably made them recognizable to me, but it's fun.
Apparently, his mom's also in it. She's the mom of the husband in the movie of Peter Falk's character.
Yeah,
and apparently she never really understood what John was doing with films or why he was filming at all. And yet she's in the film, and
that's
she does
really incredible that she was game to be in such a big role where you have to really, get emotive, know.
Yeah.
I can't imagine, being on that set, like when she's yelling at her daughter-in-law, like, you need to be committed.
Yeah.
Like. It's incredible.
He's just like, Mom, this is what you say. His dad's in it too, but a lesser role. He's just like a friend. Adolf is his name. She says it at one point. But
he must be older. Yeah, that guy shows up at the end. He's kind of an older guy.
Yeah, but also Peter Falk's character. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Oof. I can't. Again, in terms of watching this at the time, I can't imagine like. This guy is Columbo. He's the detective that shows up and, solves these cases and, one more thing, on TV. That's how people at the time would know him. And then you go to a movie like this and he's just like a monster and just so tough to watch. It's what an experience that must have been.
Yeah.
But he's incredible. Yeah.
His role is the boss of this other, like I don't know what it is, like some sort of other company. I don't even know what he does over there.
It's never really clear. They're like a road crew, or they're they're just some hard hat blue collar workers.
Yeah, but it's fitting because I guess he was a very personable man. Somebody who other people like on set looked up to. Like a lot of people looked up to him as a person. He was very like just a all around good guy. So to have a role where he is like in charge of this like crew and he like brings the crew home a couple different times is sort of fitting. Which those scenes are insane too. That's just the way they shot all these scenes, sort of
with like the groups of people.
Yeah, because you have like, I mean, just stereotypical Cassavetes getting really close into the face, and this is something that Cassavetes did going back to faces, right? For some reason, he loved to like go in as close as he could, and I will say, watching this, that there is something that always throws me off about that. But at the same time, I'm like, that this is the most unique thing that I've seen. And it's not replicated until later. And then you'll see this sort of thing with like movies we just mentioned by the Safdie brothers or things like that.
Or, what's his name? Sean Baker.
Yeah.
Films like that. But no, I feel like it's lifted from documentary. And it's hard to say if documentary is kind of getting some inspiration from his films or like, it's probably a reciprocal thing, but it does feel like he's leaning towards that cinema verite stuff that really got going at the beginning of the 60s. And of course, he worked with, a cinematographer like Haskell Wexler on Faces, and Wexler shot a lot of like Hollywood films that look like Hollywood films, but he also, I think worked on some documentaries and then, made films like the one that he directed, Medium Cool, which is this sort of half documentary, half fiction film where, he's letting these characters kind of like go into real spaces, right? They go to the protests at the Democratic National Convention in 68 in Chicago in that film. And, the characters are out in the streets in real places, and he's shooting it like a documentary. And that was the kind of, stuff that I think was inspiring Cassavetes and to shoot it this kind of way. It's interesting. Yeah. Being so close up on those faces like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's evocative. One movie that I always think of in terms of a kind of a cross section between Cassavetes era and today with the Safdie brothers is Thomas Vinterberg's Festin or The Celebration. This movie is like absolutely wild with handheld. It's really wild. It's like ratcheted up like several notches. And well worth a watch if you're into this kind of handheld frenetic style. Just feels like you're like watching a wealthy family's event gone haywire, like live with like I think Vinterberg used like even lower quality cameras. But it makes you feel like you are watching some like recovered footage.
And do you know, is this shot on 35 or did they shoot this on 16 millimeter and blow it up? I mean, he's always like, his films have always kind of had a homemade quality to them, lo-fi.
Yeah. Well, it was handheld, obviously. Did they have 35 millimeter handhelds at that time? Good question.
I would say yes. But it's always a question of like, did they have the budget sort of, or did they want to deal with the lighting and kind of the difficulty that would come with using that? And probably sound would be tougher too. I mean, these are films that require you to record direct sound. And we take that for granted, but that was something that was not developed until fairly recently to his directing career.
Well, that's the other thing too. And they did use RE Flex cameras, 35 millimeter for this. Yeah. But with the sound, that is another crazy aspect to this where a lot of this sound is being picked up live. So it doesn't always sound perfect either.
No. Yeah. And
also the music in it. There's times where, like in the beginning, it's just sort of like one person singing or whistling. And at different times, it's just like a person singing. That was the guy who was supposed to do the music, just recording something that he was going to make much larger later. Like he'd be recording some melody that he was going to make
his
into an
references.
orchestrated thing. Yeah. And Cassavetes is like, no, that's perfect. I just want that. I'm just going to use that.
Oh, I see. He did some sound work on Husbands and Minnie Moskowitz. That's Bo Harwood.
Yeah.
And then he does some music for a couple more of his films. But it's perfect, right?
Yeah. Well, it was such a fun listen, the commentary, because there were so many times where it would be like, they'd be like, oh yeah, and this is the part where did you see that little boom mic sneak up from the window in the truck? Yeah, I was on the passenger floor recording the sound from inside the truck, and for a moment you could see the boom mic pop up. Or when they're riding in the back of the truck, the kids and Falk, and there's like a wire that's on the bed of the truck, and it's actually the wire that's connecting to their sound, to each of their bodies. And they knew ahead of time that, like, he goes, that's the best I can do, Cassavetes. And John was like, yeah, it's just rope. Who cares? It's just rope. Roll the cameras. So even knowing ahead of time.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
I didn't notice it.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what Cassavetes always was thinking. I think his train of thought was, people aren't going to care. No one cares. No one actually cares the only people who care if a boom mic slips into the shot, or if there's like a little bit of the person's arm is up and in the next shot their arm is like a lower. The only people who care about those types of things are nitpicking, technical, specific kind of people who look for that, because otherwise most people don't notice those details and don't care. They care about the emotion and how they feel about as the story moves along. So
yeah, I feel the same way about the Fassbender films. I was just thinking about it more since we talked about Ali, Fury Eats the Soul last week. But those are pretty cheaply and quickly made films, and they look it, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that emotion still comes across. They don't need to be perfect. And this kind of goes back to that Godardian thing of like making the film quickly, but like trying to get at something truer, I guess, than you can if it has to be perfect, The Image too, watching it now, there's some scenes, like I think when she's getting committed, when it starts to like take on a weird kind of like stuttery effect that looks like when they would put like an animated portion on top of like a live action scene, it has a weird jitter to it. And I wondered like what was going on there. And my only thought was that that's probably just, that this film was not preserved super well, and it ended up looking weird after they, put it back together and restored it, whenever that happened most recently. But that's, that's the thing when you have an independently made film like this. There's no institution preserving this. This is something that he and his like little production company, financed and made themselves. And if this had been made like at an earlier time in film history, it very well might have been, lost, and we wouldn't be able to see it because it is a handmade thing,
That's true. That's a good point. As we progress through time, we are able to see movies that are like shot on lower budgets because it's easier to preserve them now. Less time has passed, but also technology becomes more affordable, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. They're not, these films aren't on nitrate prints, and they, they're stored next to a furnace or something.
Yeah. Which is to say that, like, there is an argument with like the Godard stuff where here's the difference between Cassavetes and Godard, where Cassavetes is employing a lot of the same technical elements, where it's shot fast, don't rehearse, try to do one takes to get as real as possible. Godard, similarly. Cassavetes he's trying to be trying to capture something very like human and real. And Godard is capturing something more philosophical and metaphorical. And yeah, both are kind of both have their chance to be using technology that's just been created in a way
Mm.
that is like asking to be used in that way. Like, okay, the engineers just developed a 35 millimeter handheld with a boom mic that could pick up sound decently well live. Let's go shoot something like that. That's brand new. And here are these guys like being like, well, this was made, so we might as well use what was literally just created, kind of in the way it's intended to. The documentary filmmakers were the first ones to do it because that's the most applicable for that technology. Those
Hmm.
and that's the world where it makes the most sense to push that technology. We need live. We need to have cameras that can pick live stuff up live, probably for war. I could imagine like Vietnam thrusting that progression forward. You have the government being like, we need better cameras, we need better equipment to pick up stuff, typically is the way it is with technology. And the artists follow up, and once they can afford the new technology, they buy it and they make cool shit like this.
Yeah.
Till today,
Ooh.
you have it's so wild to see the progression up until today where it's like we're seeing the cusp of being able to do your own thing. This goes back to maybe like Maya Deren or those other experimental filmmakers who did use cameras that were the smallest the cameras were, and probably had them on like a tripod and like were moving them around and kind of holding them on a tripod. You know what I mean?
Mm.
In Maya Deren's films, she does POV and stuff. She's moving the cameras with probably holding them. But it's going to get easier and easier to do, to the point now today where it's like it's endless. You can do anything you want.
Yeah, yeah. And we said people don't do it like Cassavetes, but I wonder if Wong Kar-wai watched his films, because as frenetic and interesting as the cinema coming out of Hong Kong in the 80s was, he takes it to another level with his films in the 90s, and they're just running around the streets of Hong Kong or wherever they're making those movies, and just making it feel alive.
Yeah.
And you lose, you forget what makes these films alive. You just like, you think, oh, you just make it look like this, you just shake the camera around, whatever, blah blah blah. Like there are filmmakers that like add the camera shake in post, digitally.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, what are we doing here? You've lost the plot. I don't know. Like,
yeah. And it's all these things where you could try it out and see if it works. In some sense, Cassavetes was trying this out, and it could not have worked. It could have not worked.
mm-hmm.
He could have created something that everybody, that like a general consensus would have said, yeah, it's too crazy. It's too crazy for us, and then forget about it, and it goes off into the very vast world of forgotten films. But it isn't the case. He tried it, and it somehow worked. Because as it is with all these things, it's never about the style, or it's never about the camera you use or whatever. There's something special about a particular, all the ingredients coming together on set in this moment, and then it gets edited, and then there's a product, and it's like, it's whatever that recipe is, no one's ever figured it out perfectly, because every director has some good films and some films that aren't as strong. There's very, very few exceptions to that rule. I think because it's something that you can't teach, and it's something that, yeah, it at least with Cassavetes, and today you have Paul Thomas Anderson's and things like that, where they're like, they probably recognize to some degree that ultimately what matters is how the actors show up to perform whatever
Mm-hmm.
the scene is calling for. All other
Mm-hmm.
things, to pretty much high degree, don't really matter.
it has to be in service of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it's like, what is this film about? You know, what is this acting style? What is this visual style in service of? I mean, it's telling this story about, you know, the kind of razor's edge of, you know, the second wave feminism moment when it just became untenable for women to be confined to this role as the housekeeper, the child rearer, where your husband is in charge of your life. And we see in this film the absolute kind of like worst outcomes of that system and why that system was breaking down and had to change. Right, all that stuff, how raw this acting is and how uncomfortable the filmmaking is. It's in service of that story, and that's like, you know, you just makes sense why, you know, everyone working on this was interested in that story, like, because this was one of the most important sort of things going on at that moment, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You've got people around the world protesting for abortion rights and laws giving them, you know, more power within marriages and stuff like that. Like this, you know, this was on everyone's minds, and you know, this film really speaks to what women were feeling at this time, and it's incredible. You know, I'm that like the scene that really crystallized it for me was her standing out on the street waiting for that school bus to bring her children home, and the music comes in when the school bus starts pulling up, and you're just like, here's like what matters. Here's this like lifeline, like, you know, she cares about these children more than anything in the world, and she cares about them as like people. She wants to nurture them and their curiosity and their love for life, you know, and that comes through so much, and how she is mothering them throughout the next couple scenes. And it's like everything else around her in her life is keeping her from being, you know, this wonderful parent that we get to see that she is, actually. So that's just like, you know, the whole movie's right there, and that's why it like really worked, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Phenomenal film.
Yeah, really good. But people, if this is your first, I know it's a lot of people's firsts because it's up there high on the Sight and Sound and stuff. You gotta go watch the rest of them, and don't skip out on Shadows. It's really, really interesting, you know. But watch Faces, watch Husbands, watch Minnie and Moskowitz. Damn it, no one's seen that movie. It's maybe my favorite of his. I think it's so incredible. And Gena Rowlands is kind of the co-lead of that one as well.
Nice. But, and then there's A Killing of a Chinese Bookie.
Yeah, I haven't seen that yet.
That's fantastic as well. And then eventually I'm going to watching Love Streams, which I think was his last project too. So many good ones.
So many good ones. Give it up.
Mm-hmm.
The politique of the auteur is alive and well on Some Like It Unauthorized.
Nice.
No, I mean, I think we kind of teased it out, but like, you know, this is a collaboration in the realist sense.
Yeah.
He's a collaborator, and there's a lot of authors at work in this film. And, you know, that's what movie making's about.
Yeah, even though he had a, you know, 140-page script ready to go, you know, I get the sense that it was, he probably, I mean, can you imagine watching him type his script out, just like, done. Here it is. What do you all have to say about it? So, yeah, there's a reason why he has an award named after him. He was a crazy guy. A little controversial, but what an artist. So,
yeah, what an inspiration, you know? Like, this is art like we haven't seen before or since.
Boom.
And now let's start going through the whole plot.
Yeah.
I'm ready for hour 2. No, I mean, if you want to offer up, was there another scene that we didn't talk about that really stood out for you?
I don't think so. I think all the scenes with Mabel, with Gena Rowlands' character, are impactful. And even though Peter Falk does a good job,
you get a little tired of him when he's just like with the work crew and yelling the whole time.
No, I don't get tired. I feel like that is all very important because you have to see like what he's going through and like what his stress is like outside the home, and that's really important because these are normal people. That's something that also has to ring true to people. Is like we're not watching like a typical kind of wealthy family deal with these problems. We're watching normal people deal with them at a time where they didn't have as much psychological resources and stuff like that. So this is a guy who's just trying to like make a living and getting called in to work overtime at times and in charge of other people, in charge of the kids, just trying to figure out what's going on with his wife and what it all means and doing it in a way that feels like totally normal. Totally, and I use that word in a wide sense. Like we're all just out here trying to live our lives, and that's what these guys are doing. And there's no oh, he should have done this, he should have done that. Like it doesn't exist with this type of film. This is more like watching, like what would you do? More like asking yourself, what would I do if I was in that situation?
Yeah. And spoilers for John Dielman. If you haven't seen John Dielman, Chantal Akerman's film, skip ahead. But it would have been more satisfying if this ended the way John Dielman ended and she killed him at the end. Like, at least she would have been free in some sense. But it's all the more horrifying that, like, they reach a kind of detente and, just go to bed and it's, the next day is going to be a normal day. That this life, the cycle continues. Oh my God, it was like... And the music comes in at the end too, and just, whew. Yeah, these are just normal people. What a horrifying thought.
Yeah, the horror of living, and it's like asking yourself, like, why is it the case that we will just sort of always be born into some life, and then within that life there will be patterns that arise that we have to like keep cycling through. Shit happens to us when we're young. We get old, we have to put up with what the world expects of us, all while we're still trying to process and deal with all the shit we got thrown at when we were young, or whatever else is the case, whatever other problems we may have. So, yeah, we just cycle through. That's the Buddhist life is suffering. The wheel of karma keeps turning, and very few find a way out of that.
Damn.
It's not so much to some extent, it's a what the hell's the word? Tragedy to some extent, but it's also like a
optimistic.
Yeah, there's a sense that it's a tragedy, but it's not a tragedy because he, as flawed as as Peter's character is, he is he's doing the best he can, So, that's a tragedy, but it is also hopeful in some small sense. You do feel for those kids, though, don't you? As characters.
Oh, my God, yeah. They're going to have a rough life unpacking all of that in the future. No, but yeah, we move on.
I mean, growing up, I grew up in kind of like a farming community and like lower class to some degree. And it really is what you hear all the time in any social gathering you go to is just a bunch of people kind of telling their stories and then saying like, yeah, it's just how it is. That's just the way it is. Yeah, this happened. Yeah, I can't believe this happened. Oh, well, I don't know. What are you going to do? What are you going to do is the constant refrain.
Yeah. They were not just like horrible people. They were born into a context, and we like what's lucky for us is that we live having learned the lessons that these people lived through,
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what it comes down to. It was a very different world, but we would not have been so different if we had to live their lives, unfortunately.
Right.
Unfortunately.
And I will say, though this is shot in the 70s, Hollywood, having lived in that same kind of area, Hollywood is a unique place in that there are still plenty of people who are living lives somewhat like this film showcases. And I mean that in a good way, in the sense that like how that LA didn't change. It's like LA as a whole city allows for diversity among class and income level for the most part. And you have like pockets that pockets that people can't afford, like Santa Monica and Malibu, stuff like that. But I don't know in this area where I was living, it's like such a cross section. It feels like I don't know, like you could walk down any given street and there'll be like super nice apartments, or there'll be like regular apartments. It's a really fascinating city in that way, how mixed and diverse it can be compared to other cities that were split by highways, or, New York or in the East Coast and stuff like that. I can imagine you can imagine watching a movie shot in New York City and having there's plenty of movies that were shot in New York City that feature people who are like struggling to get by in Manhattan in like 1970 Manhattan. And there's these like people just out there living their lives, on the street. That's hard to come by in Manhattan these days.
Or like San Francisco, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I get that. We watched Chinatown recently, and it feels like that LA is the LA of Mulholland Drive. It's the LA of Altman's Shortcuts. It's like, yeah, that city has kind of kept that same strange identity, and it's always very interesting to peer into it through these movies.
Such a quirky city. I love it. There you have it.
And if you thought one woman was a lot to handle, just wait for two, because next week we'll be talking about Celine and Julie Go Boating, the Jacques Rivette film. So we get to untangle what's going on with the women in France at this time, and I'm sure we'll have more conversation about Out One and his movies, his style. But we've never seen that film, so it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I also watched La Belle Nuit, so I can give my thoughts on how different it is from that one. But yeah, looking forward to that, and we'll find out. But we should have a Substack available by the time this comes out, with just more of our podcast episodes and some writing, some thoughts from each of us. So, but that'll be linked on our website, and everything is always going to be linked on unauthorizedpod.com.
That's right. Come read some more long-form pieces that you won't find on Letterboxd over at that Substack. All right, folks. Take care of yourselves. I know this is a tough watch, do something nice for yourself after this one, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.